So how's it going?
Oh,
You're
going
excited?
pretty good. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. So looks like we're still waiting for a couple of people to join. We got a really solid crowd here. So why don't we get started? We very excited to, this is the second in a series that we're doing here of webinars. We're interviewing some of our local leaders, people who are leaders in the virtual meeting, networking space, all of that, essentially to share sort of our ideas of what's going well and what's not going well, learnings, all of that. Every crisis brings an opportunity. 9/11 did that, as horrible as it was. 2008 did that. And now we're in this new world where, a lot of us are meeting online who used to be meeting offline, and it's a whole new world. So even after this thing is over, there's some good news today in the press. I hope that works out. But even after we all go back, I think online networking is here to stay. And so that's what all this is about. So without further ado, let's get started. Just a point of order, as it were. On the top right of your screen, you should see a little arrow there. So if you want to ask a question, Gabe is our moderator. He will answer questions for you. He will, if you've got questions for Sunil, we'll take it right at the end of the presentation.
All right.
So let's get started. So today's topic, I'm going to share my screen here. Bear with me. And whoops, wrong button. All right, are we good? Can Sunil, you with me on the slides?
I can't see your slides, but I can hang with this. I'll just go based on what you tell me. Yeah.
All right. Well, let me just briefly introduce myself. And Gabe, let me just see if can you just tell me if you can see the slides, by the way. All right, I'm presuming that we can, and I'm just going to go ahead. Great, excellent. So, brief introduction to myself. I'm one of the co-founders of Alignable. I'm a serial entrepreneur, technologist, advisor. Started a bunch of different businesses. I'm very passionate about helping entrepreneurs and small business owners, which is why I started Alignable. And also a father of 4, and I live outside Boston. But enough about me. Let's get to Sunil. So meet Sunil. Sunil, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm the founder of what's called the Global Business Mastermind, where I teach people how to build large audiences and engage and convert into business clients. And I've been mentoring people since 1991. I have about 120,000 plus business owners and professionals across the country.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
That's an incredible number.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Took a lot of work, but we're accelerating. We were accelerating growth quite a lot, and I think we anticipate to grow even more. Yeah.
And so you've been on Alignable a little while. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I think we got on in 2015, and I remember getting on, and within 2 days of posting my profile, which I spent quite a bit of time doing, I got a call from a local business person. And we met about, I would say about 500 feet away from my home in a nice little cafe. And at the end of that meeting, she wrote me a check for $50,000 for a business consultation project.
And you were hooked.
I was hooked. I said, what a great return on investment.
That is a great return on investment. All right. And you're also a local leader. So local leaders, for those of you who don't know about it, it's a fairly select program that we've started here. It's for folks that are really bringing their communities together, whether it's the local communities or online communities through networking and different groups. And these are the folks that we're actually interviewing. So Sunil's all a member of that. So Sunil, let's talk a little bit about your business before all of this madness. You used to do networking at scale. Like you had, talk about the opposite of social distancing. You used to organize these massive events.
Right. Well, our tech and startup meetings were like standing room only, 300 to maybe even 500 people a pop.
Wow.
And our small business meetings were a little smaller, maybe 50 people, 30 to 50 people. And then educational events could be anywhere from 10 to 15 to 25 people, just depending. So we had a lot of people, and I was the kind of guy who was, even though despite being an introvert, I kind of enjoyed shaking hands, getting,
An introvert organizing 300 to 500 people is the
yeah.
funniest thing. Okay.
There's only so much I could take of an event. I mean, I had to go back and lie down after a while, but
Yeah.
you know, yeah, we were really used to that. And then, when I saw the virus occurring in Wuhan, I knew that we were in, because I'd grown up. I mean, my birthplace was Singapore, and I saw what Singapore went through with the SARS virus many, many years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
So I could really anticipate what was going to happen. We're probably going to go into lockdown because of the infection rate, etc. So I started.
And I
seeing,
remember talking to you right around then, and you were looking pretty harried. You were like getting ready to cancel all of your meetups.
Totally, yeah. We thought it was probably going to be a shutdown for us as well. But then the idea occurred that we should just scramble and get online. And so we started scrambling, and I had to look strategically, I mean, to you and to the CEO of Meetup as well. And unfortunately, all of us were on the same line. I think we had to get online. That was the reality of it. But it was certainly nerve-wracking because we had to learn more about the Zoom technology. I knew some of it, but I didn't know enough of it. And so there was a scramble to learn the technology. There was a scramble to discover which were the online technologies that would work for us best. But there's also a strategic angle to this, like exactly what were we going to do for our business to make it survive.
Mm-hmm.
So,
so let's talk about that a little bit. So you mentioned to me that you had a massive online meetup.
Right.
Let me just switch back to the two of us talking here.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned to me that you had this massive online meetup of like 100 people
Right.
or something. So tell me about that.
Well, yeah, we were, I mean, in a way surprised, but not really surprised in hindsight because it makes sense. A lot of people are just moving online.
Yeah.
So we promoted it. Promoted the event partly through Alignable, but mostly through Meetup. And we had about more than 100 people show up on one of the events, some of the events actually.
Yeah.
And
so how do you manage? So you've got 100 people. You can't have 100 people on a screen. Like you can't talk to 100 people. So how did you set it up?
Well, you set it up in what's called gallery view, so you can see most, if not at least a subsection of people at a time. You can literally see their faces. Kind of like the Brady Bunch. I'm dating myself, but it's a TV show from the 70s where you could, they had opening and they showed this large family and you saw little squares, and each square had a person in it. So we had that, and it turned out to be very interesting because I found that was actually made the networking event more interesting because everybody could see the same view. So you could see everyone's faces at the same time, unlike an in-person networking event where you can't do that.
Right.
It made it very interesting because you could connect with people's faces, and biologically, we're all attuned to doing that, to connecting the faces and eyes and smiles.
Right.
And that. So that
and
was.
You also use rooms, right? Like you use the breakout rooms as well.
Yeah. So we split people into rooms. If we had 100 people, we could do 20 rooms of 5 each.
Okay.
And we gave each room or group of people, a subgroup of people, about anywhere from 5 to 7 to 10 minutes, depending, to introduce.
I would, if I was one of the attendees, I'd go into a subgroup. And
right.
Who was assigned to that group? Was it just decided by Zoom, or was it automatic? How did you do that?
Yeah, Zoom has a feature where at a press of a button, you can set it up beforehand. You can randomly assign people to groups. It's very easy. It's very fast.
So you got 100 people, 20 rooms, 5 people each room, and then they talk amongst themselves for 5 or 10 minutes ish. Yeah. And so did you, like, Martin was talking about last week about how if you let a business owner talk about their business, it'll be 30 minutes on an hour. I would do the same thing, right? We all love to talk about our own business. So how do you, in an online setting, did you go into these rooms and make sure it was going well? How did you do that?
Occasionally, but not really. I mean, people pretty much self-managed, and we told people we gave certain guidelines, 2 minutes each or 1 minute each, and very succinctly tell people who you're looking for, what your business serves, make
Mm-hmm.
it compelling. We did a little bit of
And
training.
did you
Yeah.
tell them that before when you organized the meetup? Like, here's what you should be prepared for when you come in, or did you tell them when they
We're
came?
beginning to do that, but actually, it works more effectively to let people know right before they go into the room. So at the
Right
start,
before. Okay,
yeah,
got it. And
and
so 10 minutes, you're there with, so you all talk to each other, and there's some informal chit chat too.
yeah, we try to discourage that because we want, we tell people, just to be fair, we play the fairness card, and people respond very well to fairness, so they want to give each other time, 2 minutes each, and it was pretty well managed. People are pretty decent that way. And then when we came back, from each of the breakout rooms into the main room, after 7 minutes, then we debrief and find out what worked, what didn't work, and then make sure
Got it.
if people are stepping beyond the line, that just make corrections for that. Yeah.
So with 100 people on the grid, when everybody comes out, you're moderating them to figure out what's working, what's not working. That's
Yeah.
sort of the okay. And
Yeah.
then they go back. So how long was this meetup of yours?
I have to also add, we had two other collaborators, so they were helping us, and they're helping me manage.
So
the whole
three of
thing.
you were sort of managing. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
So it's about 7 minutes, and then about 1 minute for debrief, and then back in again for another 7 minutes, and this went on throughout the entire event.
Sounds a little bit like speed dating almost.
Kind of like that, except obviously it's for business.
Right, of course.
So it's a different context, and you have slightly different rules.
Right.
Yeah.
But so if I come in, how long was the meet? So if I'm there for an hour, I could meet like 35, 40 people. Like, I would never meet 40 people in a physical event.
That's what's so interesting about going online, is because people in an online event, because of the time constraints and all that, and you can actually organize it better so people actually meet a lot more people per unit time. In fact, we usually advertise it for an hour and a half at the most, but we found that people actually want to go to 2.5 hours, or sometimes more. So they end up meeting about 48.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's really great. There are a lot of things we've learned that surprised us about online, and I'm actually convinced that online is not a bad way to do events from now on. And I can go on forever about this, but networking.
So clearly there's a ton of benefits to physically meeting someone, right? Like,
no doubt about it.
When you talk to somebody, you make that real personal connection, one-on-one. Sure. And one of the interesting things you mentioned to me was, while these meetings were going on, there was also chat going on the side, on the Zoom, on the chat side of it. And you said there was a lot of interesting connections being made even on the chat.
That's the other thing that surprised me. I used to look down upon chat lines and that kind of stuff, but now I've got a renewed respect for it, because as people were connecting and looking at different faces, etc., the chat was going crazy. And it was good, though, in a good way, because people were intentionally trying to connect with other people they heard about. They were asking questions, they were passing joking comments, which was good. It was all bonding.
Yeah.
And I found that people actually bonding faster than an in-person event, because an in-person event, people
tend fascinating.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you're sort of somewhat introverted and you go to a networking event, maybe you end up talking to like 2, 3, 4 people in an hour.
That's right.
But here, even whether you're introverted, extroverted, it doesn't matter. You're gonna meet 30 or 40 people.
Your trust, it's once more into the breach, Venkat.
Yes.
It's just, you get to go into a room, and so, but even introverts are okay with it, so there's actually a lot more engagement.
But this is, in a way, it's almost a more efficient way. So in the future,
totally.
Do you see yourself doing more online events?
Definitely.
And a few offline events, like, combining them somehow?
I'll probably do both, because frankly, I like both, because both have distinct advantages. You're correct in the offline events. In-person events get more impersonal. I suspect you still get a pretty good conversion into clientele if you do in-person events.
Sure.
Just because of the in-person touch. But online events, if you know how to do it right and you learn how to do it right, you can actually create more engagement in the audience.
Across the entire audience, right? Like, I mean,
Across
that's
the
pretty
entire
incredible.
audience, which
There's so much
on
sharing
hindsight,
going on. It
yeah.
must be a very intense experience, though, to meet that many people in that short of a time. Like, in 60 minutes, you've met 35 people. Like, what did people say after the event? Like, what was their
They
reaction?
love it. They love it. I mean, across the board, all I mean, we're doing events across the country now. And
Yeah.
eventually we'll do an international event, and I'd like to get Alignable in there as well.
Yeah.
An international virtual event, networking event, might be the first of its sort. But people love it. We get great feedback. I have everybody raise their hands at the end in their square little box of video if they got value, and everybody raises their hands. We almost never see anybody not raising their hands.
That's funny. Could have a voting feature or something eventually, right? Like,
yeah,
yes, no.
they do.
We'll get to that later.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But okay, so let's do the flip side of it, right? A lot of folks are wondering, this is all rosy and fantastic, but Sunil, come on, like, you must have had some challenges when you started out. So what happened?
Definitely.
Tell us.
Yeah, I mean, definitely in any kind of, I tell people, when you go through a breakdown or a crisis, there's the breakdown, there's the awareness of the breakdown, and then there's a little bit of trauma, and then you get past the trauma, and then you start creating a new world, right? But a new world requires a high degree of understanding new systems, structures of support. And then you need a lot of accountability or rigor to get to the next stage, right? And we went through all of that. I mean, the shock was really the first stage, and everybody was worried, and I was afraid everything's going to go to hell.
I think we all were. We all were.
Everyone, I think a lot of people still are,
But it isn't. We're going to come out of it. I mean, that's the reality. I think what's more important now, like you said, is understanding what this future is.
Correct.
And then adapting to it and really leveraging it, right?
Yeah. And I think the future looks bright because, just because of the traction we've been seeing. I mean, we're still making sales. And we have a workshop model. So we have people sign up for workshops. People sign up for our workshops, which are also virtually done.
Which are virtual, yeah.
And
so as we're talking through all of this, I think one of the questions on a lot of people's minds is, and I asked you this, which is like, how do you do a nice job? And actually, I want to ask you a couple of questions about your collaborators too. We'll get to that. But how do you do a nice job setting up your event? And you very kindly put together a couple of slides. So I'll just bring them up now. And why don't you tell us a little bit how you set up and promote an online event, right? So
yeah, I think the way to not do it, Venkat, is to most people do two mistakes. One is they make it very cut and dry and unemotional. Most people buy or decide to attend something because of an emotional pull to it.
Right.
So you have to make it emotionally compelling, but also explain how their future will be different out of attending your event, which most people don't pay attention to. What am I going to get by attending your event?
So here's an example of an event that you showed me, right? Like, so talk us through that intentionality, right? Like, what's the difference between, this example of not setting it up versus this example of how you set it up? And for the audience, we'll give you all a link at the end of the session. We'll give you a link to Sunil's event so you can go check out how he does it. But go ahead, Sunil.
Yeah, and one quick qualification, you might only see a few RSVPs in that particular event, but we have many groups that feed into one event. So that's one thing to understand. But if you look at this example, which I can't really see right now, but I'll flow with it, which is, if you look at the event title, it gives an experience of what people will learn. How could my life be different if I went to this event? And so it talks, I think, about business expansion or getting more confidence.
So the title says expand your business networking.
There you go.
Silicon Valley.
Yeah. So you're building a clear pathway to a future that's compelling for our audience. You have to understand your audience for sure. But in understanding our audience, we know that the future they want, is to get more connections, obviously, but also get connected in an intimate way that leads to a profit and to
eventually to business, right? Like, that's why we go to these. We go to make relationships that'll eventually either we'll give to them or they, either way, business goes back and forth.
Exactly. Yeah. But I think people also want and desire events where there's a high level of collaboration occurring.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something I got to say about Alignable. I found some really great collaborators on Alignable as well. So those of you who are paying attention, I'm sure you are, is, it's not just for clients, it's also collaborators. So I look for collaborators as well at events, including
we absolutely built it for that purpose, right? That's exactly why we built it. So there's another example you gave here for me, which was around educational events, because you do a lot of those as well.
Correct. Yeah.
So this one says, forging ahead online, opportunities, growth, and confidence.
Correct. Yeah. So it's confidence, opportunities. See, you want to put that kind of wording. It's not just about the wording. The wording, when you talk to great writers, they know how to write and use words that create a important meaning for people. The meaning people are looking for primarily that intrigues them and gets them engaged with you is when they see you helping them fulfill their future, and a future that's more exciting for them, right? So you don't want to just say networking event, come one, come all. You want to do that, it just doesn't make sense.
It's sort of like, what do I get? And one of the things I did, in terms of the words that you use, and again, we'll share this link with you guys later on, but you're very clear about the return on investment from this educational event. You use words like secrets, opportunities, how to do something in a sustainable way, easy actions you can take now. So clearly those are important aspects of doing it. And Sunil, you also said to me, it doesn't happen automatically, right? You some of your early events, you had like 5 or 10 people, and it built over time.
It did, yeah. Yeah, in the early days, we had crickets in some of the events. Nobody would show up. This is back in 2007.
Yeah.
But what most people ignore is that when you have a shortage of audience, other people who are trying to do the same thing as you are also getting crickets going on. So they tend to give up their audience. And we found on Alignable and Meetup that other people who are giving up on the profile on Meetup or Alignable, they were giving up their audience, and guess what? Their audience had nowhere else to go. Where would they come to? They would come to us. So eventually we started seeing up, and we looked at the math of it, the Google Analytics, etc., and we saw that time was on our side. All we had to do was just keep doing our events and showing up.
So persistence paid off there. And I think Martin made a point that you've made as well. I think this seems to be one of the secrets of all of you guys who are doing such a great job of it, which is sort of you have sort of a desire to give back at all times and also stay consistent, right? So that's one of the things I've heard from you. I've heard from Martin. Some of the folks that are coming up next as well. So that's a huge part of it, and that's somehow has to come through in these events.
Has to, yeah. You want to show that you're gonna keep doing this.
So you're not just coming and going, right? You're gonna
not
stick
with a flash in a pan, you see, and people are not fooled, right? They may be fooled half the time, but not all the time. And people will start sensing that how committed you are to that community. So there's a social intelligence and a moral intelligence to this as well, because people want to see that the heart's in the right place. They can almost feel their body when they interact with you. So you have to be genuine and authentic about it as well. But
absolutely. And so, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, I just said that can be learned, but you have to practice. It's really it's practice and consistency.
Absolutely. Yeah. So before we, so there are a whole bunch of questions that are starting to pile up over here.
Sure.
Some really interesting ones. And so before we jump into that, I'd ask you to put together sort of a net of your sort of how to set up your events for success, right? So it's not just necessarily how to run the event, but how to set it up. So, are you able to see the slides, Sunil?
I can't, but I think I can grok it.
Okay, I can, if you like, I can tell you the points you put up there as well. But the first one was about your alignable profile.
Right. Yeah, you want to optimize your profile, and you can look at my profile. It creates a compelling future about audiences, about what people really want. Yeah. And you don't want to say, psychotherapist. You want to say leading you to a different age of romance, loveliness and business success. That's more interesting, right?
Got it. So
I know some of you are going to feel that. Yeah,
speak to the end state, basically.
that's correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
The next point you made was design your event with care intent. We covered that.
sure.
I think practicing the technology to adapt to your design, it's a great point. And you talked a little bit about the learning curve for Zoom
Right.
there. And then find out about becoming an alignable local leader.
Definitely. Yeah, you want to become a local leader because you can take your local market to a global perspective as well. See, and you have, if you have local leaders in different areas, you can collaborate with each other as local leaders and combine your audience over time. And it's a great way to do business. So absolutely, I would highly encourage you all to become local leaders for sure.
So as you can see, we're having our technology challenges a little bit as well. But yeah, so the Alignable Local Leader Program, of which obviously Sunil's a part of, it's a pretty exclusive program. And I welcome everyone to email us at localleaders@alignable.com for how to get in. So like Sunil said, right, like we want to see your intent. We want to see your commitment to a community of some kind.
Correct.
And so we want to see some of that before we bring you in. And there's a lot of resources we give you to be successful as well. And we would like to grow this to be as many people as possible, but that's sort of our criteria. So Sunil, that was fantastic. I mean, one of the questions, I guess, that it has come up, so I'll read through some of the questions, some really good ones, is sort of this whole, and Martin got the same question, right? Like, I think people are really, some of these folks that are in the audience are wondering, like, how do I actually build an audience? Like, I have so much to offer. How do I build that audience? And, Martin's response last week was sort of like, hey, look, you should be thinking about your audience before you set up your meetup. Don't think about setting up a networking event and then think about the audience. So tell us a little bit about your take on that.
Well, yeah, I was trained as an engineer. I think you were too, Venkat. But we were taught to think of design, but understand your audience first before you design something.
Absolutely.
So, if you're looking to design a Lamborghini kind of business, you want to make sure that you design a Lamborghini, which means you have to understand what you need as a Lamborghini driver, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing that pertains to an event. If you want a really good event, you want to understand your audience and then gear the design of that event to that audience. Now, if you don't do that and you just throw something up on the wall, it's not a very smart experiment, and you may not get kind of data. In fact, you do not get any data because nobody will show up.
Nobody shows up. Yeah. Got it.
So you have to get that kind of data and make sure some people are showing up, so you start getting feedback from people.
Right, and then you actually know what's working and not working, right? I think the feedback loop, absolutely. It's one of the biggest gifts you can get.
Fastest way to build traction and confidence in your business, because you feel really good as you start getting good feedback that can help you reorientate what you're doing with your audience.
Right, absolutely.
I think
so next question. What is the best way to get invitations out to probable attendees?
Well, you can use the Alignable system. This is why you want to become a local leader and start getting a Alignable account, because as you build your community on Alignable, you can promote your events there and start getting invitations. But again, you want to learn the art and science of building a good invitation that's compelling.
The invitation itself, right? Yeah.
The invitation itself has to also be compelling.
Right.
So they open the email and they look see what's inside, and then they're compelled enough to actually register for the event.
Right.
So you want to learn how to do that, and that comes with practice and experience as well. The other thing is how we do it on Meetup is Meetup actually automates a lot of that, as Alignable does as well. If you combine Meetup and Alignable,
so you use both platforms.
Use both.
Excellent.
Use both, please. I emphasize, use both.
Yeah.
And you will do very well once you learn how to do it. There are some tricks to it. But Alignable, frankly, is a little bit easier to use because it's local and they promote it pretty well. So yeah, my strong advice is get on Alignable and learn how to use the event promotion system there. Okay.
Excellent. Can we get Sunil's steps to create and effectively manage breakout rooms? And this may be one of those things that if you'll register for local leaders at alignable.com, We are building out a resource page for networking. I will work with Sunil to put together a nice blog
Absolutely
post,
love to do it.
and we will send it out to you folks.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's see. So some questions about how do you get people? Do you register through Eventbrite? Do you push this stuff out on social media in terms of like marketing? Do you promote it? Like some of those kinds of questions.
I tell you what, you can promote all you want. You should promote as much as you want on all these social media platforms, but you got to recognize something. If you're not getting traction on those social media platforms, you're probably not going to build a very large audience. And the ones you mentioned are very good, but you have to spend a lot of money to promote on those kinds of platforms. Eventbrite is a great platform, but frankly, it hasn't given us a good return on investment. Just being really honest. Not as
Interesting.
much as Alignable or Meetup. When you combine the good features of Alignable, Meetup, and LinkedIn, this might be for a future conversation, Venkat, but
Sure.
then you see if you where I prospered and my people have prospered is we learned how to combine different platforms.
Sure.
Yeah, very high ROI. And Alignable is one of those platforms where you get a very high. If you figure out how
In
to
your
do
case, it's an infinite ROI, right?
it, infinite, continues to be infinite.
Right.
And, but I'm actually going to sign up for the premium account because it just makes more sense. And it just makes infinite more sense to do it.
So how do you do? Let's see. So so now we're getting a little bit more technical here. So when you go into a second or third breakout room and want to do it randomly, does Zoom put people in different groups the second or third times? It's kind of like getting into the weeds a little bit.
No, it's a good question because we've experienced some issues with that, and people have complained that they're putting the same people again.
I see.
There's something about their randomization that's not working, but we're actively working with Zoom to get that fixed. I think we're forebears of this problem with them, so they're beginning to realize it. So we are working with Zoom to fix it, the randomization. So there's a little bit of a dance there, I'll acknowledge, but I think it'll be fixed. It should be fixed. It's a simple engineering problem to just randomize better.
Well, I mean, we're having these conversations. Obviously, we're going to fix all of these things. And another question, this may be for me, is Alignable planning a meetup type tool to manage events? So I would say the answer to that is stay tuned. We definitely want to do anything we can to help people network better and more easily and all of that. So once again, you'll see more. We're going to be working very closely with our local leaders once again on how exactly we can add value, but please stay tuned. That's a great question. How do you build online collaborations on Alignable? I mean, that's a very broad question, but maybe you could talk about one example.
I can. I'll tell you that there are two levers you got to press. One is you got to make sure that your narrative is up to par, because if your narrative is not interesting, other collaborators don't know how to promote you or distinguish you from other people. So your narrative or your messaging has to be, stellar, really. If you want higher quality collaborators, especially loyal collaborators for you. The other thing is you got to start indicating a transparent audience that you are building, whether it's an Alignable or Meetup or whatever you're doing. You got to demonstrate that. And
to your collaborators, you mean?
To your collaborators. Collaborators have to be able to go in and see it, right? So on Meetup, Alignable is fairly transparent.
Right, and you have like 129 recommendations on Alignable, which is incredible.
Yeah, and I didn't have to work too hard to get them, to be honest with you, and I'm not bragging or anything. It's just because we set up the narrative on my Alignable profile to be very compelling.
Yeah.
And that's
one of the key things.
Yes, definitely. Your audience and your narrative are definitely two of the most important things. There are other things that you got to demonstrate your ability to organize and all that. Because what collaborator wants to work with another collaborator is not organized. You got to make sure you are.
Right.
Yeah. But
sorry, go ahead.
I just mention one thing, which is I think critical. Can you hear me, Venkat?
Yeah.
Alignable is very Google friendly, so I get quite a bit of business from people finding me on Google, but they don't find my website. They find my Alignable profile and my Meetup profiles. Various groups, which actually lends a lot more credibility for what I'm doing.
Right.
So that's an important thing to finding other collaborators as well. You got to look outside the box sometimes when
Hmm.
you're looking at Alignable and Meetup. But when you do, it's definitely a high return on investment.
Fantastic. Okay. Question about I have taken in-person networking. So Nancy asks that she's been leading and charging for 12 years. So it's presumably charging for meetups.
Right.
And she has now moved to Zoom.
Right.
She's asking when and how much should I charge for online meetings?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's impossible to really find out unless we talk in a little bit more detail, because you really have to look at your strategy and the market to determine how much you can charge. We
Mhm.
tend not to charge
Yeah.
because we found we make more money in the back end of networking events as well as
And relationships, right? So this is
and
more of a front
relationships.
end investment to build
Yeah,
those relationships. Okay.
if you charge upfront, you narrow your funnel. If you
Mm.
don't charge, you have a wider funnel. You bring them in, and then you want to make sure you have something on the back end that you upsell to people that's of a premium quality. And we found that model actually works a lot better.
That's a lot better. So your top of funnel is much bigger in that
Correct.
sense.
Correct. Yeah.
And Nancy, maybe the answer to your question is you can experiment a little bit, right? Like you can try a couple of different models. I mean,
Yeah,
how
I,
it's
I would say, Venkat, I think it requires a strategic understanding. See, because some people are doing like what she may be doing is a subscription model for her
Mhm.
networking events, or having people pay smaller amounts. But I think with today's market, she may have to look at what her real superpower is. Most people who do networking events have an undistinguished superpower, which is their ability to draw in people and engage them,
Yes.
and it's mostly undervalued by themselves. uh,
They
but
need
when
somebody else to tell them what the superpower is sometimes,
Yeah,
right?
and
Yeah.
we've discovered that a couple of networking organizers have come to us and we say, oh, your superpower is this based on the feedback we're getting from people. Why don't we just package and bottle this up and sell
So
it to
so
them?
maybe the best thing is to do these meetings and then sort of get the feedback from your audience on what did you actually like or not like. And
Correct.
on that note, I would love for our audience to tell us what you liked or didn't like about this interview as well, so we can keep interviewing because we have a ton of really nice ones lined up for you guys.
Great
And
stuff.
the next one, in fact, is going to be about it's by Sue, and you may know Sue Brook, and she's going to talk a little bit about how to do masterminds, but not in the traditional mastermind sense, but she's doing it almost like twice a week now
Hmm.
at scale. It's fascinating. So definitely attend that one. We'll put a link to that at the end of this webinar. So we have a couple more questions here. So
Right.
let's see. One of them is very interesting. Michael writes, trends change a lot. How do you see and connect with current clients or future clients? That's
That's an
interesting.
intriguing question.
Yeah.
I try my best to read across the board. I subscribe to the New York Times and other things because, when you start reading, your mind starts putting together, especially some good sleep, starts putting together what you can see for the future. And you could be wrong. But I looked at January when I came back from my vacation. I looked at the news in Wuhan, or January, February, whenever it was, and you could already see what was going to happen, right? And you could see the breakdown, the danger that was coming. But with danger, there's always opportunity. My military training
Right.
and other trainings have taught me that, right? So you want to look for the opportunity, and the best way to find it out often is to interview your audience and find out what they're doing. So the more events you do, the more feedback I get. The more engaging you make your events to be, where you're describing your event. I'll just say, it may sound weird, but it's true. When you frame your events in a poetic way, where there's a description of the future, the intrigue, that you are morally intelligent, that you have social intelligence, people tend to connect with you better.
Of course.
And they
Absolutely.
spontaneously give you feedback.
Yeah.
And
Intent is everything.
yeah, and you start getting a very good trend line of what the future could look like based on what these people are telling you. Where do you want to go?
So
Yeah.
your
So
answer to that is really, to Michael, is to be talking to your audience all the time, so they're
yeah,
keeping you in the loop on what those trend lines are
absolutely.
that they're starting to see. For sure. I think that's a great point. A number of people would want to connect with Sunil and perhaps your company. They're asking how to design a narrative. So we will put Sunil's profile. I think we shared it at the beginning. We'll share it at the end as well.
Right.
You can connect with him. And if you're having any challenges connecting with him, you can always reach out to us. We'll make sure you can do that.
Sure.
And let's see here. So let's look for a couple other questions. Somebody's asking about, this is a very interesting question. I didn't think we would get this, but assuming that there is still value in a diverse marketing mix, are there any plans to craft a direct mail arm for?
Well, I'm sorry, I missed the question, Venkat.
I think she's asking, I think Linda's asking about the value of direct mail.
You know, direct mail is still a really good marketing tool. I wouldn't underestimate it. I still go out to my mailbox, and anytime I get something personally addressed to me, I'm excited to open it. And I open it sometimes and go, it's from my realtor, you know.
Right.
But now I'm intrigued, you see. So direct mail is still a really good. I mean, I was trained in 1991 by my mentor, and I started learning how to do what's called cold calls, but really I learned how to make those cold calls warm calls.
Right.
I also got trained in the art and science of direct mail, and it worked for me as well in filling up our workshops back then.
No school like old school.
No school like old school.
But maybe learning the lessons of that old school. There's a lot of good lessons to be learned from direct mail and cold calling.
Yeah, right? But I think if you rely only on direct mail, you may be stuck in a paradigm and may not be able to adjust to the tremendous opportunities that are online right now as well. Got to look at both, you know.
Yeah.
Well, and the world we're in. One other thing to that lady, that person, is you may want to combine your direct mail with Alignable and Meetup, and that way, for example, you could post events that you host online on your direct mail. That makes actually a great conversion right there. Yeah.
Well, and Alignable has, what, at least at the local level as well, we have a newsletter that goes out to every community every week.
Perfect.
And that newsletter has a very high sort of engagement rate. So that's another place where you can post your stuff.
Yeah. Can I have a quick shout out to you? Because Alignable is one of the best forms of SEO, search engine optimization. For those of you who don't know, if you want to direct more traffic to your site, you definitely want to get on Alignable and put links between your website and Alignable as well. And then if you combine that with all the direct mail and everything else you're doing, you can create a pretty good turnout for your business.
Just FYI, our website, our organic Google search traffic, 90% of it is actually long tail. Our brand related traffic is only 10% of our traffic. Most of it is actually the SEO stuff. So that's been awesome. And we're investing much more in SEO this year as well. It's a major area of focus for us.
Thank you. Yeah, I applaud you guys for doing that. I mean, really awesome work.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Do you have a preference for chat-based Q&A like this, or interactive where you bring people into the conversation? So like chat meeting.
It kind of depends. Yeah, it kind of depends on your market. Like some people are more of a creative mindset. I have a coach in my mastermind who's much more creative, and she has much more creative people in her groups. So they just have a free for all, which she kind of moderates a lot, because creative people tend to be chaotic a little bit. You gotta allow that chaos to occur a little bit. But for business meetings, I would try to make it a little bit more formalized, but not too formalized. So you gotta kind of find your pacing at the right level. But that comes with experience and a little bit of you got to reflect on your audience as well and get them reflect on what works for them, authentically. Yeah. But the warning I'll give to you, if you make it too chaotic, you may not lead to business. So you gotta look at that. And unfortunately, I can't give you a comprehensive answer. You have to look at it case by case basis.
Sure. Yeah, I see what you mean. So if a chat platform can sometimes have, maybe with too many people, perhaps it's hard to sort of be more structured about sort of crafting it towards a business. But perhaps you could also connect with those people one-on-one afterwards, right? Like
we do. We actually give people the ability to download that chat log, because everybody puts their contact information on there and various information, and light little jokes and stuff that they share, you see.
Got it.
And
So the entire chat log, everybody can access the chat log.
everybody accesses it. We're more democratic like that.
Got it. So that's very nice. Okay, excellent. So we're coming up on our end of the meeting here. There are tons more questions. We couldn't get to all of them, but I will promise that there's a lot more coming. Sign up for the local leaders email list at least. Perhaps you don't become a local leader immediately, but we'll definitely show you how to become one. And at the very least, there will be sort of a lot more content that we're going to send out about how to do meetups effectively and so on. So Sunil, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. This was great, and I'll follow up, and we'll probably do a couple of blogs out of this. There's just a ton of great sort of and then coming up shortly, and I think Gabe might post this to the chat, we have not next week but the week after, we're going to have somebody, Sunil, Sue Brook. Sue Brook is the mastermind champ, so she's going to be talking about how she does it at scale. She's got a really interesting background, so all of you guys are going to want to attend that. We'll send out invitations probably later this week, next week, but there's going to be a link at the end of this presentation as well. So that's that. Thank you very much. We will try to follow up with everybody who's asked questions that we couldn't answer. But thanks for attending, and stay tuned for more. I hope this was useful. Stay safe.